Welcome back as we do another GM Corner from our Tome of Topics. This week on... I don't know why you always do that. You just leave it, like you leave it hanging. How do you plan out a story? So what do you do for it? I mean, first of all, maybe how much time do you spend, and then from there...
How do I plan a story? As a GM, planning the story or planning what kind of arc I want them to go through, I just think of what interests me. What sounds like an awesome like D&D story or any story really, and keep it very open because your players are not always going to go in the direction you want.
In fact, they're usually not going to.
Yeah, they're usually not going to. So what I do is I just go, okay, this is something important that they need to hit in order to get to here, but how they get from this point to this point is not important. So I'll just keep between the points open, and then adjust as necessary.
For me, I think it's kind of it's a multi-part question in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because one, for a story, it's like I'm thinking, what would make a good story? What would enthrall my players? What would I be excited in seeing unfold? And it's basically a series of plot points or bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
And that can take anywhere, depending on what inspired me to think of that story, anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours.
Yeah.
Now, for building the story as I'm running the campaign, I like to spend at least, if I'm planning for a 4-hour session, I like to spend at least 4 hours of prep time for the different things that they can run into in that story, the different NPCs, the different locations. I still leave it open because, and I don't like to solidify more than one session ahead, because if I solidify 2 or 3 sessions ahead, I'm going to have to redo that work anyway, because they're, like you said, not going to do what I expected them to.
Mm-hmm. About how long do you spend usually, Tim? Like per hour of game time?
Per hour of game time? Okay, I spend more time building my fights than building my story.
That was still prep time.
Okay, so...
Prep time for the story that's unfolding in that session.
2 to 3 hours. I don't think I've gone beyond 4 hours, even if the game session was more than 4 hours.
Fair enough.
What about you, Dan?
Mine depends on the system.
Yep.
I've heard of you doing a week. Technically. That's on and off.
Yeah. And it also depends on what I'm prepping for. But I probably would say on average 2 hours.
For like a 3 to 4 hour session?
For a game night, so yeah, 4 to
5. Yeah. Would you guys say that is the same amount of time each week, or do you spend more time before you run the game? Like before session 0, do you spend a lot of time on like planning everything out, and then it makes it easier later on, or
that's another dual part, and it also goes with what you were talking about, time and the two. It depends. Am I running something completely homebrew, or is it something in a setting? Mm-hmm. Is it an adventure out of a book? Because if it's an adventure out of a book, you only need to spend maybe an hour reading a few pages ahead, so you know what's coming up. Especially with if it's a homebrew world, something that I've created, there's a lot of time that goes into that.
Right. You might have been working on that for years. Before the game's run.
If I'm going to create my own world, one of the things I'm going to want to do for a session 0 is have a write-up of basic knowledge that I can give to the players, that they know about the world, so they're not coming into a world blind. They've never heard of this world. I just created it.
Unless there's a specific reason for that.
Yeah, me myself, the longest I've ever done for before session 0 is for my Heroes Welcome campaign. That was the longest I ever did. That's because I had an idea for a character way back when, but I didn't think he really fit in the world that I wanted to play him in. So it's like, okay. And
what
so I
world
started.
would he come from?
Yeah, what world would he come from? And then it evolved from there.
For short arcs, like we do on the show, my Star Wars arc, I prepped, I think it was 2 weeks for that. And for that, I structured it just like a script. Act 1, Scene 1. Scene 2, Scene 3, Scene 4, Act 2. And basically, when it came time to record, I just knew where we were in that structure.
Mm.
And that one basically went off without a hitch, and you guys went through that just perfect.
Yeah.
Basically as I expected you to.
A couple little hitches here and there, but not
Yeah.
much. Nothing serious.
No. For my one-shot Taldori game, I spent several hours prepping for that, and didn't get to almost any of it.
Yep.
So, and with the one-shot, you're not going back, so there's nothing you can do about it. But standard campaign game night, I try not to prep more than what I need that night.
Mhm.
And even when I prep that,
You still don't get to it, or get to more sometimes.
last game night, I prepped a whole thing with some dragons and kobolds, and didn't get to it till the last 10 minutes of the game.
Mm.
Because everyone wanted to go north
Yeah.
and do their thing. But we had created the world together. See the under the hood world building articles.
And I mean, going north was kind of what we had intended to do,
Yeah.
but we got sidetracked by a Goliath attack and having to rescue some people. So we were kind of just picking up from where
Yeah.
we had left off. Like you, for a standard game night, for a standard ongoing campaign, I'll prepare what I need for that night.
Yeah.
But also prepare a little bit extra. I'll
Yeah.
prepare what I expect, plus a little bit extra to cover a few bases if they go away from what I expect.
Yeah, and I had already foreshadowed what you guys would be expecting in that forest,
Right.
so I knew what to do.
Yeah.
And I would say my strategy on this is currently in the process of evolution, because I'm currently a school teacher and I'm learning to be a school teacher as I'm going. I'm going to college still while I'm teaching, so I'm one of those people you hear about that are emergency certification kind of thing. Last year and this year I am a temporary certification,
Yeah.
so I'm not a full-time teacher. But what I'm learning about is lesson planning. And the way this works is you get like a general plan for what you're going to do for
Your
the period of
syllabus.
time. It's not really the syllabus, it's called a scope and sequence. So you basically have, here's the order I'm going to hit things in.
Yeah.
And then when you get to a new chapter, before you start that chapter, you actually spend some time and say, here's generally what I want to do each day, day by day. And again, this is one of those things where you plan it out about a week in advance,
Yeah.
and then, okay, well,
Yep.
we didn't get to this, or we got, ahead. Here's my list of things I can do if I have extra time, because you're supposed to fill every single second of
Yeah.
your class period. You don't want kids just sitting there playing on their phones, I guess. But I'm working on that still. So yeah, it's like with the last game when I ran the Exalted game. That's
The season on right now.
the season on right now, because it's always the season on right now. Anyway,
We have
But,
one more episode.
so yeah, by the
So
time you
we'll-
guys listen to this, it'll probably be over.
Yes.
But in that one, I actually had I built it more like a sandbox. I had
Yeah.
here's the locations that exist, and here's what's going on in each location. Here's the movers and players and shakers that are doing their thing, and here's their plans.
Yeah.
So I came up with all of that.
Which is how I structured the
But I
flexible
didn't-
game
yeah.
plan.
Yeah, I didn't have a plan, like I didn't have a 3-act structure of how I want it, because I've never learned how to do that. I didn't have a plan for exactly how I want the players to go or
Yeah.
how I want the story to go. I just said, here's the sandbox, here's my relative timeline of when things are happening, and if I have a point where we're just kind of dragging on, no one knows what to do, well, here's my next thing that's on the list of things that are
The
going to
next
happen.
trigger event.
The next trigger
Well,
event.
And here's a question that goes along with that, with the sandbox. There's really two types of sandboxes that you can do. And there's the sandbox where you have all these locations and you have a timeline. So if I go to point A at one point, stuff is still happening over at point
Yeah.
B,
Yeah.
and you're keeping track of all that. And then the other is kind of the video game sandbox, where point B's quest doesn't trigger until I go to point B.
Yeah.
Which way do you guys run things?
Both.
I'm a first.
I do both.
Okay.
But I do number 2 most of the time.
I say I generally am. Yeah, I'd have to say I do both. I generally go with, like, in a more serious game, I'd go with A, but I have run a B game, the one we did in 4th edition, where I ran that one. Like, things
Didn't happen until
a
we
lot
got
of
there.
things didn't happen until you got there.
Yeah.
For me, A is the default. If it's something I really want them to be involved in,
See it happen.
then that one instance is a B situation.
Yeah. And I think there's room for both in the same game.
Oh,
at
definitely.
times.
There is, and again, your fun's not wrong, whichever way is good for you.
I'm such a small-time GM, first-time GM right now, that I can't think, okay, this is, while they're doing this stuff is happening over here.
You know what
I
that
can't-
says to me, Tim? That says you need to run more games so that you
I
get
do
better
need to-
at it.
I'm
So when are
trying.
you starting your next campaign?
I don't know. That's what I asked.
So as soon as Dan's current game is done with, you should be taking over Sunday nights.
Sure.
You have a game you want to run.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. So how do you guys run your games? How long do you spend planning for each session? And do you find that painful, or is that your favorite part of the whole thing? Let us know below, and we'll see you next time on our next GM's Corner and Under the Hood.
Like, share, and subscribe.
See ya.